Behind the back.
Is this good? Yeah. Now I see. All right. Wow, that's a lot of meat.
Keep talking. I'll fix it.
All right.
I don't know which one. Try again.
Hello, is that better? Can everybody hear me? Wave in the back. Yeah, all right. And the remote? Right. Great, great. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. We are really honored that you're here. We're so grateful that you've chosen to become vaccination ambassadors for the county as we try very hard to reach herd immunity in Nassau County. Stay away from there. So let me do some introductions. I am Dr. Larry Eisenstein, Commissioner of Health. I've been the commissioner for almost 10 years now. I was a deputy commissioner before that. By training, I'm an infectious disease specialist, and I was working in infectious disease as a virologist, basically, and doing a lot of HIV work when I was hired to be the deputy commissioner at the county and helped manage the H1N1 pandemic back in 2009. And it puts it all in perspective, the different pandemics. The gentleman in the red shirt is our Nassau County Commissioner of the Office of Emergency Management, Commissioner Morelli. Thank you for being the host today. Deputy County Executive Kyle Rose Louder is here. She's my boss, so I'm only going to say nice things. And we're David Moreland, Director of Food Service from Nassau County, is here. She's coordinating the vaccination program. I'm getting further and further away, but I guess it doesn't matter. The members of the Nassau County COVID Call Center in the back. Thank you very much for all you're doing. Vicky DiStefano from the County Communications Office. And from the Health Department in the back is Alyssa Zarabian. Alyssa was a student of public health when I gave a lecture at Stony Brook way back. In 2014. And after the lecture, I mentioned that we were doing a mass vaccination drill and I needed people to come play dead. And she was looking for a job. She didn't know me. She already had her bachelor's. In public health. She volunteered to be a mass casualty person at a drill. And as I was walking among the fake dead, she asked if she could talk to me, and I said, "No, you're dead. You can't talk to me." But when we did speak after the drill ended, and that was her way of finding time with the Commissioner of Health, and we hired her that day. We did her interview. So it's just a story, and now she's understudying to be my press officer and director of legislative affairs. So be creative, make yourself known and available. Great story. So thank you, Alyssa, for setting this up. You have some flyers in front of you. We're going to make this quick. I have about 10 or 12 slides to go over. Some key points for you to be our ambassadors, what it means, and then we'll open it up to your questions. And hopefully by 4:45, 5 o'clock, we'll head on out. And I'm willing to spend as much time with each of you talking about whatever you want. If you want to have a private conversation after, I'm happy to do that. But in the meantime, thank you for what you're doing. The goal is to achieve herd immunity. We don't know yet how many people have to be vaccinated to achieve herd immunity, right? We don't know if it's 70% or 80% or 90%. Does it really matter? 70 or 75 or 80%? It absolutely does. You either achieve herd immunity or you don't. I think I'm going to stop with this microphone at this point. Okay, I can go from the back. Nobody will see me, but that's okay. Is that better? All right, very good. So, right now, 737,000 Nassau County residents have received at least one dose of the vaccine. That's incredible. We're among the highest of any large county in the country. By percentage, we're the highest of any large county in New York State. 737,000 people have had at least one dose. Does anybody know how many residents there are in the whole county? Anybody? 1.3 million. Very good. So, as well as we've done with 737,000 people getting their first dose as of yesterday and today, we still have 600,000.
Yeah, Adam's telling me. He said it sounded really bad. I said,
some of them are too young to be vaccinated, under 16. And we're hopeful next week that 12 to 15-year-olds will get authorization to vaccinate them with the PFIZER vaccine. But where you come in is that whole group, 16, 17, 18, high school students who are now eligible to receive the PFIZER vaccine, and only about 15% of them have received even the first dose. That means 85% of all the 16, 17, and 18-year-olds, all of your classmates, I know some of you probably 15 or 14, but how many of you are either 16 or 17 or 18? All right, so most of the room. So 85% of your classmates are not vaccinated yet. That is great public health opportunity to achieve what we're trying to achieve. So we want you to be our messengers, our voices of positivity. We want you to dispel any of the myths that you hear. And as our ambassadors, that's what we're looking for. And we're going to provide you with some key information and important training today to take back to your schools. And next week, as you know, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, with the help of Northwell, we will be vaccinating up to 2,000 high school students. As of this morning, only 200 people had signed up for the 2,000 spots. Has anybody signed up for vaccination next week in here? All right, so that's one of the key points for you to bring back to your school. Next Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at Nassau Community College, 16, 17, and 18-year-olds can be vaccinated. Why is the timing so important? Well, if your first dose is next week, which is May 13, 14, 15, or 16, anybody know how long before the second dose of PFIZER? Not a month. Anybody?
3
Not
weeks.
2 weeks. Not the call center people who do this all day long. Yeah. No, it's not 6 weeks. How long between the first and second dose of PFIZER? Yes. 21 days. You were close. 21 days is what's recommended. So if you get the first dose on May 13th or 14th or 15th or 16th, your second dose is the first week of June. And after your second dose, how long before we consider you fully vaccinated? 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So if you get your second dose the first week of June, you are fully vaccinated the third week of June. In time for graduation. In time for all of your summer jobs, for your camp jobs. Once you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to quarantine. You won't miss summer work. You won't miss summer travel. You won't miss summer vacation. You can go to graduation. You won't miss it. If your prom or you've been invited to a prom is after the middle of June, you don't have to miss it. There's great benefit to being vaccinated. And the way we want our ambassadors to deal with this whole situation is positive only. There's a lot of people who are going to try and drag you into a debate, talk about the negatives. You're ambassadors. It's a positive role. And that's how we do this. I'm not interested in debating people about all the reasons we shouldn't be vaccinated. The bottom line is, from a public health perspective, these vaccines save lives. When you are able to convince somebody to be vaccinated, and rightfully so, there's a chance you save the life. Nassau County Department of Health has done 80,000 vaccinations out of the 737,000. I guarantee you somebody in that group is going to live because they're vaccinated. So to all the people that have been working at our hospitals, at our pharmacies, at our vaccination pods that we've run, they're all saving lives. It's really important. It doesn't happen without the help of the Office of Emergency Management, the help of IT, our Information Technology Department, the police. So I got to thank all of them. So let's get started. Clicker not working.
Humans click wrong place.
That's the first one. Okay. All right. So we'll try this again, and I'm going to walk away before it starts to screech. Or not. This time I'll come this way. Okay. So we're asking you to be ambassadors. What are you being ambassadors about? The vaccine. The vaccine for 16 and 17-year-olds, the only one that's eligible is PFIZER. So that's the only one I'm going to spend a lot of time talking to you about. If you want to talk about the others during question and answer, we can. But as an ambassador, it's PFIZER that our 16 and 17-year-old high school students will be eligible to get. And if you see the second line, we're expecting EUA for 12 to 15-year-olds very soon. I think next Wednesday is the day that 12 to 15-year-olds will become eligible as well. Anybody know what EUA stands for? Go for it.
Emergency use authorization.
Emergency use authorization. That means because of the emergency that we are in as a country and the evidence that we've reviewed is enough to approve it more quickly than we might normally approve it, but still has undergone rigorous safety protocols, rigorous safety evaluation. Okay? So these are under emergency use authorization. PFIZER just this morning applied for formal approval, which will mean there's no limitations, there's no legal restrictions or anything. Hopefully they'll have that the FDA will meet and convene probably in the next month or so. They'll probably get their formal approval. That's a guess. So the PFIZER vaccine requires 2 doses, at least 21 days apart, and ideally not more than 35 days apart. So even though people are scheduled 21 days apart, there is a 2-week window. So if somebody says, well, I don't want to get vaccinated on Thursday because 3 weeks from Thursday I have an AP exam, and I don't want to miss my AP exam. Or the next day I have an AP exam, and I don't want to be sick during my AP exam. You can postpone it for up to 2 weeks, the second dose. Or if you go into in 3 weeks from, I'm getting it Saturday, but 3 weeks from Saturday is the prom and I don't want to miss it. You don't have to take the second dose exactly 3 weeks. We can reschedule you for a few days after the prom without any problem whatsoever. So it's 3 weeks apart, but that second dose can be up to 5 weeks later. Any questions about that? So don't let an event, a sporting game, a prom, a graduation, a social event be the reason for the second dose, be the reason not to get it, because we can reschedule you and postpone it. Everybody gets it?
I have a question back here.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it says ideally not more than 35 days apart. What happens if it's after 35 days?
You give it. But if somebody, for example, we have people who work for business, so they're not going to be around until 40 days. They're going away or something like that. After 35 days, you still give a second dose, but it's been studied and proven to be equally effective up to 35 days. The truth is, if it's 36 or 37 days, it's going to work just as well. If it's 40 days, it's going to work just as well. But we can only say what's been studied and proven, and that's been studied and proven, okay? For anybody who has a question about Moderna, which is the vaccine that I received for 18 and over, so maybe other family members are going to get Moderna, that's 2 doses at least 28 days apart, and it's the same thing for the second dose. It's a 14-day window from 28 to 42 days. Who had a question? Yeah. Do you get what? I can give you this PowerPoint, sure, no problem. This is on Zoom, we're recording it, right? So you can review it after, okay? Johnson & Johnson is 1 dose. Now, you are considered fully vaccinated 2 weeks after the 2nd dose, whenever that is. So if you get the 2nd dose of Pfizer 35 days after the 1st, then it's 2 weeks after that that you're fully vaccinated. New York State has a great app called the Excelsior test that once you're fully vaccinated, you can put on your phone and it shows that you're fully vaccinated. So when I go to Mets games, I just flash my vaccination on my Excelsior test to prove it. And the governor has come down with a lot of rules about going to Broadway, going to ball games, going to public places where if you're fully vaccinated, the seating is better and less restricted. And so having that on your Excelsior pass on your cell phone will be very helpful to you. So getting vaccinated will open up opportunities for you during the summer that are very important. Now, while I'm teaching all of this to you, the goal is for you to take this back. So what is the goal? You're the ambassadors. What are we looking for? What are we hoping you'll do? Well, first, we want you to educate, just like I'm educating you. Explain that you can't be there in 21 days. It's okay if it's 23 or 24 days. Explain how these vaccines have been proven to be safe, how we've been studying them. I'm going to talk about all of this as we go along. Many people have misconceptions. They might say, these vaccines are brand new. They haven't been studied long enough. Well, the truth, always be truthful. We've only been using them on people for about a year, but the technology is not new. These vaccines have been studied for use for over a decade.
So we have.
Some people I say, well, how long is enough time? And they say 10 years. If it were 10 years, I'd be happy. Has been studied for 10 years, just hasn't been used for 10 years. Question. We're going to talk about that later. Save that for the end, okay? The Johnson & Johnson incident has scared people, but the Johnson & Johnson incident should also provide comfort. And I'm going to talk about that later, okay? Because we discovered it. That's how closely we're watching it. We discovered it. So we want you to encourage and be positive and describe all the perks that come with being vaccinated. Hey, you're not restricted if you want to go to a concert or a ball game or a prom or a graduation. The seating is different. You're allowed to travel. There's so much more you're going to be allowed to do in the immediate future if you're vaccinated. And that's not my policy. That's the state's policy and the CDC's policy. We want you to inform. Now, some people think educate and inform are the same thing. They're not. Inform people where they can go get vaccinated. Okay, that's not education, that's informing them. So besides our events next week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday at Nassau Community College, does anybody know where people can go get vaccinated? Yeah. Some universities are vaccinating their students, yeah. CVS right now, it just went on their website today. You can get any of the 3 vaccines, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and Moderna, at most CVS's today. Good, where else? Yeah. Jones Beach is a state site that's running with Pfizer every day they've been open. So there's another state site at SUNY Old Westbury. And a lot of doctors' offices are now carrying vaccines. So there's dozens of places that people can be vaccinated. And if you go on the state's vaccine finder, you can put in an address, just Google New York State Vaccine Finder. CDC has it too. You can put in a zip code or an address and it shows you all the places that you can be vaccinated. Inform people about our Student Days event next week. We're holding those doses for high school students. Now, we won't turn a parent away who brings a student who wants to be vaccinated. If the parent says, you know what, I'm willing to do it now, we're going to vaccinate everybody we can. Believe me, there's enough vaccine for everybody now. So we're not going to turn everybody away. So encourage, be positive, talk about how, I'm going to talk later about the benefits and perks. Inspire people, tell stories of how being vaccinated has allowed you to get back to things. When my wife's a nurse, and when we were finally, the first day we were both fully vaccinated, we went out to eat for the first time in over a year. We just went to the diner for diner breakfast, something we've been doing for a long, long time. eggs. It was just eggs. It was the most glorious eggs I've ever eaten in my life because we were in a restaurant after a year. Those are the kinds of inspiring stories you can share about what you can do when you're vaccinated. Listen, there are a lot of fears, like we heard about Johnson & Johnson. There are a lot of fears. There are a lot of rumors. Listen, and the bottom 2 points tie in together, and be respectful. Be respectful. Don't be judgmental. When people say they don't want to be vaccinated, don't call them names. That's not what we're about. We're about inspiring and addressing people's concerns. And remember, one of the most challenging things you're going to be dealing with is misinformation. And you are all from the internet era. And so the internet is a tricky place. So for example, what's your name? Iman? So Iman here, what school do you go to? Herrick? So Iman from Herrick and I decide we want to make a website. We'll call it Iman and Larry's Medical Website. Sponsored by somebody who goes to Herrick High School and a doctor. All of that is true. The way the internet works, we could put anything we want on that website. We could say, we believe that if you eat pizza every Friday in May, your head will explode. We're allowed to write that. I guarantee you somebody somewhere will stop eating pizza on Fridays in May, right? Because people believe what they see on the internet, and there's no restriction. And so one of the most important parts of being an ambassador is helping us get the proper information out. So listen to the concerns, respect the concerns, and tie it back to education. These 6 points really are circular. In fact, the next time I do a presentation like this, I will make it circular because it all ties together thinking about it. All right? So hear people out. We don't bully people into being vaccinated. We don't judge them. There are students who want to be vaccinated that their parents won't let them. Without parental consent right now, they're not allowed to be vaccinated. There are other health things that 16 and 17-year-olds can do without parental consent. Right now, this is not one of them. So do the vaccines work? One of the most important points about this is that the vaccines work so much that I use the color that I hate to use on PowerPoint, green. Green never looks good on PowerPoint. In clinical trials, Pfizer prevented about 95% of people from contracting the virus. But more important, people get obsessed with that number. What about the other 5%? Don't worry about that number. The red point is more important. You know how many people in the Pfizer clinical trials died of COVID? Zero. In medicine, we never say something is 100%. The Pfizer vaccine in clinical trials, 100% protected against death. That's all we care about. We don't want to die. We don't want our grandparents to die. We don't want our friends and neighbors, loved ones to die. These vaccines prevent death and hospitalization. If you're looking for a number one key point, and people say, well, what do I need that for? Because you won't die. It's so simple in a lot of ways, right? And they say, well, I'm young, I'm not worried about it. Fine, your parents won't die. Your grandparents won't die. It's compelling, it's inspiring. Science has given us a tool. How many people have died in this country from COVID? Well, way more than 9/11. In 9/11, about 3,000 people died. How many people have died from this? No, in the United States. Anybody? More than 500,000. More than 500,000 people have died in this country from this, and we have something that 100% prevents death. Think about it. This isn't like one of those, well, maybe the data is a little bit on our side. The data is overwhelming. I'm going to walk this way. They got tired of me over there. Questions about this? Yeah. That's what I'm going to go through questions and answers later on my slides. If we get 16 and 17-year-olds to sign up, do they have to bring parents with them? Yes, their parents have to consent. It can be written on a form. So the parent doesn't actually have to come, but we do need parental consent. We will not vaccinate a 16 or a 17-year-old without their parents' approval. That's the rule. Yeah.
Okay, so question, you say it has prevented 95% of people from contracting the virus. So what does the vaccine do? Does the vaccine lessen the symptoms or stops transmission?
Both. The vaccine lessens transmission and lessens symptoms. So if people do contract it after they're vaccinated, which is very rare, they tend not to be sick. They don't die. But most people, the overwhelming majority of people, will not contract COVID if they're vaccinated. It's not 100%. You'll always hear somebody, you see, I know somebody who's vaccinated and they caught COVID. Well, that can happen, but they're not going to die. And they're probably not going to end up in the hospital. Very unlikely. And that's what we want. We want people to live. That's all. We're just trying to keep people alive here. It's really very simple if you think about it in those terms, right?
I have one more question.
I'll get to questions at the end. Is Pfizer vaccine safe? Is it safe? Yes. Millions of doses have been administered worldwide. Does anybody know how many Pfizer doses have been administered? People say, how do you know it's safe? 170 million doses have been used on people. And we have found nothing that shows any hint of danger from the Pfizer vaccine in 170 million doses. Okay, you try something on 20 people, you could say, you didn't try it on enough people. I get it. You try it on 50 people, you say, I didn't try it on enough. This has been used on 170 million people. Think about that. That's half the population of the United States, and there's no trigger of any danger signs, okay? It is intensively monitored for safety. So how do we know it's intensively monitored? Iman before said, I think people are worried about Johnson & Johnson. So Johnson & Johnson is a different vaccine. It's only for 18 and over. And there's a system in place where any side effects get reported to the federal government. They picked up a trend of blood clotting on 6 people out of 7 million doses. 7 million doses, they found 6 cases. That's how intensely they're monitoring. That means 6,999,994 people did not have this side effect, and they still monitored and found it. So when people say, how do we know it's safe? There's a federal system called VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, that is monitoring all of the potential dangerous side effects of these, and by the way, every vaccine. When you get a flu shot, they're monitoring. You have a family member who gets MMR, measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, they're monitoring. So the federal government is always monitoring vaccines. 170 million Pfizer doses have been given without any dangerous symptom being triggered. And they're still monitoring and monitoring. That's pretty impressive numerically. Side effects are very rare. Now at the bottom, the Moderna vaccine is very similar to Pfizer, and the side effect profile is the same, in case anybody asks. But Moderna, again, is for 18 and over. Iman, you asked about this. Johnson & Johnson was put on pause after a very rare side effect of blood clotting was reported. 1 in a million. Just being female increases the risk of blood clotting. Being pregnant increases the risk of blood clotting. The use of oral contraception increases the risk of blood clotting. All of those to a higher rate than this vaccine. And the fact is, way more than 1 in a million people catch COVID during the pandemic, and more than 1 in a million people die of COVID. So at the end of the day, after evaluating this, the Food and Drug Administration declared that the benefit of being vaccinated outweighs the very small risk of a blood clot. There's a very small risk of a blood clot. There's a much bigger risk that you contract COVID. Right? I'm not going to do it, but if I said in this room how many of you have had COVID, at least a third of the hands will go up. Right? So that's what we're trying to prevent. And so for people who don't know, is Johnson & Johnson safe? This finding is less than 1 in a million. But for you, we're talking about PFIZER, because that's what's available to 16 and 17-year-olds, and there wasn't this dangerous side effect yet.
So there hasn't been any deaths due to Johnson & Johnson vaccination?
There was 1 death from blood clot as a result of Johnson & Johnson. The other blood clots, I don't think resulted in deaths. And I'm unaware of any deaths tied to Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. 170 million doses and none have been tied to deaths. None, 0. Think about that. Just sticking a needle in the wrong way, you would think somehow, nope, that's how safe this is. If somebody says, well, you don't know, this is new, you don't know what's going to happen down the road. That's right. We don't. We have to always be upfront and transparent and honest. We don't. But we know statistically it's very unlikely. And we do know that without vaccines, COVID would be ravaging our community. There would be no graduations. There would be no proms. There would be no back to school. There would be no baseball games, right? And if you don't believe it, I don't know if any of you have read what's happening in India. Has everybody read? 400,000 cases every day for the last 2 weeks. Different cases, 400,000 new cases every single day. There's going to be millions of deaths. That's why we're doing this. This isn't fun. We're not flippant. We are saving lives. That's what we're doing. That's a positive, inspirational message. You're lifesavers by doing this work. So what are the questions you're most likely to be asked? And then if I don't answer your question, then's the time to ask your other question. These are the top 10 most frequently asked, and our call center staff in the back gets these all the time. Number 1, can the vaccine give me COVID-19? No, it is not physically possible. This isn't Star Trek where like magic things happen. We're not giving you live COVID. It can't give you live COVID, okay? Number 2, would the vaccine cause me to test false positive on a test? No, it cannot trigger a false positive test. So if you're afraid you're getting tested before the prom, but you don't want to be vaccinated before, like a few days before because it could cause a false positive, no, it cannot. This is a messenger RNA virus, so it must alter my DNA. No, this vaccine never even gets close to the nucleus of the cell where the DNA is. Totally different creatures, messenger RNA and DNA, not related. The vaccine will not alter your DNA. Many people comment on this who have 0 training in genetics, 0 training in biology, but suddenly become DNA experts. I don't argue. I try and educate. We're not picking fights. We're being respectful. But the fact is, the scientific fact is, the vaccine cannot alter your DNA. Okay? 170 million people have gotten Pfizer. None of their DNA has been altered. All right? Can I catch COVID-19 after being vaccinated? This was this gentleman's question. Yes, but it is very unlikely and even less likely that you become seriously ill. Now, very important point. We have seen a lot of people become positive with COVID between the first and second shot. What do you think about that? In the red.
Technically fully vaccinated, you only have the first part of the vaccine that's protected, so it's not preventing you from death.
Right. Great. What's your name? Pradiksha. Well, that was pretty good. You're not fully vaccinated between the first and second dose. We expect that you can catch COVID. So if you get your first dose next Thursday, it doesn't mean that by next Friday you're safe. 2 full weeks after your second dose before you're fully protected. Okay? A lot of people, and it also from the time you're exposed to it, it could take a week up to 14 days to come out. So you could be vaccinated today and have been exposed yesterday. You're going to catch COVID because your body hasn't had time to make the antibodies yet, to make the defense system yet. But once you're fully vaccinated, you can catch COVID. It is very unlikely. And if you do catch it, you're probably going to be just fine and very, very mildly ill, if at all. How long does protection from the vaccine last? Well, At least 6 months. That's proven. Why don't we know more than that? Yeah.
Because you just said you didn't use it recently, but the vaccine just came out with one of them was just recent, so we don't have a lot of information on it.
We just started using it 6 months ago in the general public in December. It's only been 6 months. There's no way to know it's going to be longer if nobody's actually used it long. At first they said we've proven it for 3 months. And they said we've proven it for 4 months. And they said 5 months, now 6 months. I think it's going to be way longer than 6 months. I think, because then the next question is, well, if it doesn't last that long, do we need a booster? We don't know that yet. We don't know about boosters yet. We're going to get to it. But for right now, at least 6 months of protection. And if you do get that Excelsior Pass app on the state, which is really cool, it gives you 6 months of free pass from the date that of your last shot, because that's what we know. By the way, in a few weeks, they'll say 7 months, and 8 months, and 9 months. As the time goes along and we prove that it works, the time's going to change. So we're still learning. Is the vaccine safe if I want to have children one day? At our vaccination events, the hardest discussions were with pregnant women. And I fully understand. Nobody wants to take anything that could potentially harm their baby. I agree with that. But COVID could definitely harm a mom and her baby. And so that's the point. So is the vaccine safe if I want to have children one day? Yes. And the CDC and the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology supports vaccination for pregnant women, for women who are considering becoming pregnant. Should I get the vaccine if I already had COVID-19? The answer is yes. We don't know if there's a difference in the protection that having the vaccine, having the virus versus the vaccine offers. You've heard the word variant in different strains. It appears that there's slightly different coverage. And so once you've recovered from COVID, at least 10 days, you can get the vaccine. Some people recommend, and I kind of recommend this as well, you can wait up to 90 days, but people after 10 days after having COVID, you can get the vaccine. What are the most common side effects? Anybody here vaccinated? Did you have any side effects? What did you have? After the second dose, she had a fever and chills. That's exactly what happened to me. After the first dose, my arm just hurt a little bit. After the second dose, the second day, like for 4 or 6 hours, I had chills and feverish, and then it just goes away. So yes, you may have pain, redness, swelling at injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle pain, chills. All of these are signs that your body is having an immune response. These are all positive signs. We're happy when you have these. Now, my 17-year-old after her second shot had no symptoms at all. That's fine too. I saw the needle go in. I know she got it. And I know it's going to work. You know, so some people have mild symptoms and signs. It's not a big deal. There's no problem with it. Just know that it might happen. Okay? But it's not COVID. That's your body's normal response. Before antibiotics existed, started in about the 1930s. Before the 1930s, how did you survive an infection? In the back. What's that? Bleeding. No, that didn't work. Leeches didn't work. How did the body survive an infection before there were antibiotics? Yeah.
Your body produces natural antibodies to whatever it's fighting inside of the body.
So your body fought off fever. Antibodies was one way. What's another normal response that fights off infection? Nope. They could have, but I'm talking about if you got a strep throat 200 years ago, how did you live if you lived? Fever. Fever is a good thing. It's your body's normal defense. Your body can survive a fever, but the bacteria and the viruses can't. So we're in a world where what happens the second you get a fever? What do we tell everybody? Take a Tylenol. Take a Tylenol. Why? Unless you're really uncomfortable, fever is a normal response. So if you get a vaccine and develop a light fever, that's fine. It's your body doing what it's supposed to do. It's not comfortable, but it doesn't last long. So you have chills, get under a blanket for a little bit. If you're really uncomfortable, you can take a Tylenol. People all the time, well, when do I take a Tylenol or an Advil after some people like load up before the shot? Why? If you're really uncomfortable, then take it. That's my advice. How does that messenger RNA vaccine work? Okay, we're not going to do a PhD level microbiology test, but people want to know this, and you're the ambassador. So on the sheet that we gave you is a really nice picture from the CDC of how it works. Read it later. I urge you to go over it and see how it works. Very basically, the messenger RNA vaccine introduces small, harmless parts of genetic material of COVID-19. They took a little piece of the gene. It can't copy itself. It's not alive. It's a broken off little useless piece. But the body uses it to learn how to make a copy of that protein, the spike protein. You've seen the spikes? And once the body sees that this spike is there and is an outsider, it makes antibodies which crush it. So that's how it works. The messenger RNA vaccines teach your body how to make the protein, and then your antibodies, your defense cells, see it and remember it and crush it. So people say, well, I didn't make antibodies later. As long as your body recognizes that spike later on, you're going to have a response to it. Okay? If you want to delve in deeper, we can talk later or look on this sheet that we do that. Does the PFIZER vaccine contain live virus? No, it does not. There's nothing live in that messenger RNA. It's a little broken off piece. It's harmless. Bonus question. What does it cost? There are parents who want to vaccinate their kids but are afraid of the cost. We have to be sensitive to that. It costs you nothing. It is free for anybody to get vaccinated. Will my immigration status matter? No. You will not be asked your immigration status. We want everybody who's here to be vaccinated. Very important. Anybody who wants to be vaccinated can be. The asterisk, if they're 16 or 17, parents have to approve it. Do I need parental consent? Yes. And we're talking about how we're going to do that. If parents can't be there, the health department accepts a consent form, which we're going to send to all the schools. And we even send phone call, but Northwell is going to be administering the vaccine. Probably best that if possible, if parents there, and we follow whatever their procedures are. So parents do need to consent. You had another question.
Okay, so say you do contract the virus after you have already gotten the vaccine, can you transmit the virus to someone else while you have the virus and you're vaccinated?
So if you're vaccinated and you contract the virus, can you transmit disease? If you're symptomatic, after you're vaccinated, you typically have much lower levels of virus. So can you transmit it? It's possible, but much, much, much less likely because the amount of living virus that you have if you're vaccinated is much lower. So we consider it very low risk. And in the beginning of all this, they said, well, even if you're vaccinated, you still can't be around your family, so because vaccinated people might be able to transmit disease. It's really not an immunologic thing. You don't catch the disease, but you can transmit the disease. Either you catch it and replicate the virus and transmit it or not. Once somebody's vaccinated, it's much, much less likely. But anybody who's got symptoms, really important, just because you're vaccinated, if you get symptoms, you're still supposed to be tested. Because some people who are vaccinated can still catch COVID, and if they have it, in theory, they can transmit. But for people who have no symptoms, it's very rare. Very rare that somebody who has no symptoms is vaccinated, is transmitting virus. We don't think that's going to hold. Yeah. So why do people who are fully vaccinated still wear masks? Yeah. So the answer to your question is kind of, yes. If all of you were fully vaccinated, I would have no reason to wear a mask. The truth is, I don't consider myself at risk. So I'm very comfortable being here right now without my mask on because I'm vaccinated, right? Most of you are not vaccinated. I'm not afraid of dying of COVID because, as I just presented to you, the chances that unvaccinated and die of COVID is almost zero, right? But societally, until we have herd immunity, wearing a mask is a societal good. It's an important thing, and it's still possible if people become positive, in theory, that they could spread virus. But when I'm out with friends or colleagues who are fully vaccinated, I don't need to wear a mask. When I go on an airplane, I'm going to wear a mask for the rest of my life because we've learned how well masks work. Next time I go on an airplane, I'm not going to worry about catching COVID-19. I'm vaccinated. But if you're going on an airplane, it means you're probably going somewhere fun, right? You're going to visit family, you're going to the beach, you're going to Disney World. I don't want any virus. I don't want to catch any cold while I'm on vacation. And we've learned the common cold is mostly different kinds of coronaviruses, not COVID-19. But so for me, we've learned how well this works to prevent the spread of disease. There was no flu season this year because of this, right? So as far as I'm concerned, there are people who are going to wear masks in public going forward indefinitely. There are other cultures where that's standard. Do I feel the need for it? Until we reach herd immunity, it's a good thing for society. There's still a possibility of spread to people who are at high risk. They have underlying immune disorders and the like. But in actuality, a population of fully vaccinated people don't need to wear a mask. They don't. But this room is not fully vaccinated. So it's a courtesy that this is where we are as a society to protect each other. Public health is never about protecting one person. It's about protecting the health of the whole community. And that's what we're trying to achieve with herd immunity. For every single person we get vaccinated, that's great. But what I want is herd immunity so nobody can get sick at all. Wouldn't that be great? All right, what else we got? Yes. If you have a disease, can you still get the vaccine? Which disease? There's very few circumstances where you can't get the vaccine. If you got another vaccine within 2 weeks, you can't get it. That's an emergency use thing. But there's very few circumstances that eliminate you. Anaphylactic reaction to the materials in this vaccine would really be about the only reason. If you have certain cancers where you don't have an immune system, it makes sense to wait. But 99.9% of people that come qualify for the vaccine. Somebody who doesn't, they're going to know it. They're going to have a medical team taking care of them to discuss it with them. Okay, so why should I be vaccinated? People need an incentive. They don't just go and do it. This is where this becomes fun. Why should you be vaccinated? Exempt from quarantine after an exposure. So if you're fully vaccinated and the person sitting next to you all day in high school gets COVID, you don't have to quarantine. You're fully vaccinated. You don't have to quarantine. Somebody in your household gets COVID. You don't have to quarantine. You're protected. You won't miss your prom or graduation or your summer job or your first weeks of college, which is the most fun I've ever had. Nobody wants to miss all of those events. If you're fully vaccinated, you won't have to quarantine if you're exposed to people. The only way you would have to is if you got actively sick and tested positive. If you got actively sick, you would want to stay home. But if you're sick, you should stay home anyway. That's not unusual, right? We don't want people sick going out and about. You can attend large gatherings in New York, Mets and Islanders games. That's our team. Any of you Yankee fans, too bad. This is my presentation. And Islanders are our home team, right? Our colors are blue and orange. The Islanders' colors are blue and orange. That's not a coincidence, right? You can go to those games without testing because you're considered safe. And the governor yesterday said, theaters like Broadway, how many of you like go to Broadway once in a while, right? Fun. Theaters can have vaccinated sections where people sit right next to each other and unvaccinated sections, which I'm telling you are not going to be right up front. They're going to be all the way in the back where people are kept apart. You can gather in indoor settings without wearing masks or social distancing if you're around fully vaccinated people. You could do it outdoors as well, except in large crowded venues like the theater at Jones Beach, we still want you to wear a mask. But if you're out at the beach with your friends and you're all vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask. Think about it. These are all important reasons why you would want to be vaccinated. And the most important, what's the most important benefit? I said it earlier. In the back. You don't die. Oh, where did it go? I got so excited. Oh, you are unlikely to catch COVID and you won't die. It's so simple. Why should you be vaccinated? Because you won't die. And anybody that says, oh, people who are 16-year-olds typically don't die. Typically they don't. But their grandparents do when they give it to them. And their parents get sick and end up on ventilators, right? You are unlikely to catch COVID if you're vaccinated. You won't die from COVID. You are much less likely to spread COVID to sicken your loved ones, friends, and community members. And you help us get back to society, help us get society back to normal. Notice I put you in red in each one. This is something that each individual is able to contribute to the betterment of society. There are a lot of people who say, well, I'll let everybody else get the vaccine. If a lot of people say that, not enough people get the vaccine. You is red because every single person is able to contribute to the wellness of our community. And when people say to you, well, why do I want it? Because you won't die, because you won't give it to somebody. So we can get back to going to all the things we like to without the mask. Next year at this time, if we're good at this, there should be no masks. What about hesitancy? All right, I'm going to speed up a little. Hesitancy. People who don't want to be vaccinated. You're our ambassadors. We want you to be positive about this, right? Treat people with respect. There are historical reasons why there are hesitant people. The US government has done experiments like Tuskegee, especially on residents in the South of color. Black men were injected with syphilis in Tuskegee, Alabama by the United States Army. That experiment happened to see what would happen if somebody had syphilis over the lifespan. There are absolutely valid historical reasons why some people are hesitant. And we have to be respectful of that and talk about the numbers and talk about the freedoms that come with being vaccinated and the research and the 170 million doses of Pfizer that's been evaluated. Go back to the numbers. The internet, use of reliable sources. You can find anything on the internet. Always refer people to the real information. The CDC is always great. One of the flyers is from the CDC. New York State Department of Health is great. If you notice, one of the two sheets has APHA, the American Public Health Association. That's a great website. But people shouldn't be getting information from random websites that people just make up and say whatever they want. You know, there's a lot of trolls out there. There's a lot of people spreading misinformation. So point people to the actual correct information. Use positive language. And there's this great, I hold this up. We gave you this, which shows you the difference in words that you use. Words matter, right? So I love the first example. Talk about the benefits of taking it, not the consequences of not taking it. Everything can be messaged positively. There are great benefits. Benefits, you live. Benefits, you don't have to, you can go to sporting events without being tested. Benefits, you're not going to miss your summer job because you're quarantined. Don't say the consequences are you're going to have to miss all this. So go over this. These are really important things that would take too long to do this, but I love the words on this handout. And identify, don't pick fights. Don't pick fights. When people are adamant that they don't want to be vaccinated, we're not going to bully them. We're not going to pressure them. We're not going to fight them. People have to look at the evaluate the information on their own and make the decision that's best for them, and we're going to respect that. And when there's an opportunity to discuss it, you'll notice when that opportunity, the door cracks a little bit open and you have a chance to discuss it. That's where an ambassador can be super helpful. And that leads us to the last point here, identify opportunities to dispel myths, educate, and you'll see where there's a chance to get somebody to consider vaccination. People who are clearly against vaccination, doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what you do. If somebody is clearly opposed to this, they don't have to be vaccinated. Don't fight it. Respect them. They've made their decision. That's their choice. Where there is an opportunity is somebody who they heard something and you have a chance to clarify the information. Or they heard that messenger RNA vaccines impact your DNA. If they knew that it didn't impact their DNA, maybe they would consider it. You can explain that to them. Or they could say, they haven't studied it in enough people. And you can say, Pfizer's at 170 million doses. There's a difference between people who say, vaccines are being given by government and big pharma to make billions of dollars. That's the only reason. Or they're putting a chip into people's bodies. All the rumors that you hear, if people truly believe that, and that's the reason they're not going to be vaccinated, don't engage that. Use your resources where you can help people get information that they're interested in to make a decision that's right for them. We don't fight, we don't disrespect, we don't bully, but we do encourage and inspire. And that's really what this is all about. So, just a little bit of an update. I can tell you, being an infectious disease doctor and at the health department the last 12 years, every year vaccination is a hot topic. Whatever the topic, whether it was H1N1 or MMR or whatever. So now I can take any questions from the audience. Yes.
I have a question for volunteers this year, and one of the two friends were also teaching in the school, and the only 3 people in the school who haven't got vaccinated. And the reason why is because one of them heard something from like a family friend's friend that works with Pfizer, that the vaccine, don't take the vaccine. And so because they keep hearing this information like word of mouth passed down from somebody who apparently works with Pfizer, they think it has some like reliability to it, and they're like open-minded, but also like I don't want to like be confrontational because again like I respect them, so and I don't want to like come off as like offensive or anything. So how should they deal with that situation, especially because they wear masks that aren't necessarily like CDC approved and might be pretty good.
You're not the police, all right? So if somebody has heard from a friend's cousin's nephew's neighbor that not to use a vaccine for a certain reason, and they believe that, you're in a tough spot. That's not one that you're probably going to win. But just the way you describe it, they heard from a friend's who works at Pfizer. You all know a bunch of teenagers. I've got 2 of them at home. You all know gossip. With each generation of person that passes it along, the story changes, right? So I already assume when you say they heard from a friend's friend who works at Pfizer, that what the person at Pfizer said, if they said that at all, by the way, because people have their own agendas, isn't exactly what's come down to them. But there are people who have their own internal reason for not wanting it, and they may not be sharing with you what their actual reason is. Maybe this is somebody who's looking to have a baby and they're just a little concerned because of that. So they have a reason not to. So my answer to you is you are ambassadors of positive and good. You are not the police. You are not out looking to pick off people who are unvaccinated. You are there to be a resource for your peers that they can come talk to you. People in your school who you've never spoken to before, when you wear these great t-shirts that we're going to give you, they know they can come ask you a question. So the role is for you to be there for people who want to talk, who are looking to talk, not for you to aggressively go after them. That's not what we want. Okay? And as far as them not wearing a mask, if somebody's truly wearing a mask inappropriately against the guidelines, that should be reported to the school administration. The health department or whatever can get a call from the school and deal with it. But I don't know what you mean by a mask that's not CDC approved.
Like she does wear like a mask most of the time, and when she does, it's like one that goes like out in the field.
Oh yeah, I love the The people walk around with a mask from the chin, like that helps, or it's hanging off their elbow.
Why wear a mask?
Why wear a mask? Because there's a rule that says you have to wear it, so look, I'm wearing a mask. But we all know this is how you're supposed to wear a mask. You know, and honestly, it should be snugger fitting than that. But you're not the police. You are people who are here as a resource to inspire and encourage, but don't go looking for trouble and don't go picking fights. And if there's an employee violating the rules, you're not the police. They have an administration. They have assistant principals and principals whose job it is to deal with that. So by all means, feel free to report what you think is inappropriate. But then again, you don't know if somebody has an underlying health condition and they're physically unable to wear a mask. Or something like that. So don't pick a fight. Don't get up in the teacher's face. You're here for other students to talk to speak with, and to encourage them. As of yesterday, when we launched, or 2 days ago, we launched this whole student days with that great press conference, and some of you were on TV, and it was really exciting. So far, as of this morning, only 200 of the slots out of 2,000 were filled. So we have 1,800 PFIZER slots for high school students next Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Talk about that. Come get vaccinated. Don't fight people. If there are people who don't like it, just walk away. Don't bully them, and don't be bullied yourself. Yeah.
Where do people sign up to go to this thing?
Where do people sign up? I'm so glad you asked. If you go to Nassau County's website, right on the COVID link is a big banner that says for students to sign up for COVID vaccines, click here. So it's Nassau County, NY, yes, Vicki. .gov/vaccine. That's why I say I have a space bar. Nassau County, NY.gov/vaccine. Very easy. So you can pick the date and the time and all of that. And by the way, if parents are coming and want to be vaccinated, that's great. We love that. Let the students bring the parents into it. That works too. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think my question was kind of, I worded it wrong, but basically it was like, how can you prevent misinformation from word of mouth?
That's very difficult. How you can prevent misinformation from word of mouth. You could spend, this can be my career summed up in a nutshell, is how to prevent misinformation from word of mouth. All you can do is present proper information. Present proper information. When somebody says vaccine is too new, well, this technology has been studied for more than 10 years. That's not new. And it's been used on 170 million people. That's an impressive number. But we don't pick fights. We just, if somebody says, aren't you afraid that's it? No, I'm not afraid that it's too new. What I'm afraid of is COVID, killing one of my family members. Now that's, of course, using a negative word, but that's killing. But that's what COVID did. I guarantee you we're not going to do this now, but if I asked everybody in this room, if you know of somebody that died of COVID, somebody's hand would go up. It's just too many people died for it not to be the case in a room of 35 people. You had a question? You had a question.
What treatments such as chemotherapy
That's a complicated but a good question. Will treatments such as chemotherapy impact the efficacy of the vaccine? It might, but if somebody's on chemotherapy, hopefully they have an oncologist guiding them through the vaccine process. So none of you should be answering complicated questions like that. I don't answer those questions. I say, what does your oncologist say to do? And they usually say, well, he told me to get, or she told me to get the vaccine, but what? Your oncologist told you to get the vaccine. End of story. So it could, if you have no immune system, then a vaccine is not going to work. But there's very few cases where that matters. In the back.
It's kind of along the same lines, just in terms of chemical network.
Yeah.
There's also another rumor that the vaccines can cause difficulties with fertility in
Yeah.
the long term.
Yeah. Will the vaccine make you sterile? There is zero evidence. How do we know? Because you know how many women have gotten the vaccines and gotten pregnant? The exact same percentage as people who have not gotten the vaccine and became pregnant. The percentage of women who have gotten the vaccines in the same time frame and became pregnant is identical to the percentage of women who've not been vaccinated and became pregnant. There's no drop off in fertility. No drop-off in fertility for men or women. Yes, Binghamton, where I went to college way back 30 years ago.
So I haven't seen really people who had autoimmune
Yeah,
not believe
yeah,
but believe that they cured the COVID with an FDA approved medicine and refused to get the vaccine. And as you mentioned previously, has like made up their decision. Like people like being vaccinated.
Uh-huh.
And no matter like how I guess sway their decision, they they believe that like I guess they kind of like bought into they kind of like bought into the Facebook tweet that and like Instagram posts that are like old from like 2019 to 2021 when the vaccine was
yeah, yeah. I wouldn't. I wouldn't. When somebody has made up their mind, that's not a good use of your energy fighting with them. Furthermore, this person has already had COVID, which means they have a certain level of immunity, even if they have an autoimmune disorder. So let me go back to this important point. Bottom 2 points. Don't pick fights and identify opportunities. And notice the last few words at the bottom and where there is no chance. As ambassadors, you'll lose your mind trying to talk what you consider to be sense into somebody. Common sense is not common. What you think is common sense, somebody else doesn't. And so if you have somebody who's at risk of all things, but they're not vaccinated, and they refuse to be, and they have all their reasons, that's not a good use of your energy. People have to make decisions, and people have to make the decision that's right for them. So go back to treat with respect. They may have other reasons you don't know about. If they bring it up to you, you could use positive language. It can be very frustrating. As a public health official, my life's work is trying to prevent disease, and vaccines are a huge part of that. And I deal with this scenario all the time. But if you have an individual friend, don't lose a friendship over this. Then again, if somebody's not vaccinated, you don't have to invite them over your house. You don't have to socialize with them. They've made the decision to not be vaccinated. You have to do the decision that's right for you. And so right now, my wife and I are socializing with people who are fully vaccinated because we think that's the safest option. And I don't want my kids to have to quarantine because somebody was in my house and now is sick with COVID. My 14-year-old is not vaccinated yet, so she would have to quarantine. So look for opportunities, the bottom bullet, and also realize where there's not an opportunity. And maybe in the future, that person will come to you. And when they come to you, that's when you discuss it. But don't pick fights. We're about respecting people's decision making. I understand people being hesitant. This is a newish thing that we're doing here, but we're doing it because the death tolls are horrific. But it's also proven to be incredibly safe, right? There are people who say MMR, which is 50 years old, longer than that. They have issues with it. Imagine this. This has only been used since December under emergency use, 6 months, right? So I understand it, but identify where you can make a difference and inspire and encourage, and no matter what, stay positive. Like, you know how frustrating your situation is, and you start to become almost more and more deeper frustrated and angrier. That doesn't solve anything. It doesn't help you be positive. It just aggravates you that somebody's doing something differently than you would do it. And I get it. This is my existence as a public health professional. I get it. But identify opportunities where people are willing to speak and willing to learn and willing to educate, and that's where you jump in. Yeah.
So there may be 16 or 18-year-olds who already exposed to
Yeah.
the consent of both parents or both guardians to get vaccinated.
Wow. I need a lawyer for that question. If one parent says yes and one parent says no, I have to. I don't. That's a really tough decision. I mean, thinking about my own kids. My wife and I have always basically agreed on the healthcare of our kids, but what if we did? That's a challenge. I feel badly for kids that want to be vaccinated, but their parents won't let them. That is a common scenario. And there are some things in public health that parents don't need, that kids don't need approval, right? You can go get sexual health care for free at 16, even younger, I think, without any parental consent. But right now, the state's guidance is we need parental consent. So I'm not getting involved in family disputes, but we don't want to create strife in homes. But it's frustrating, I understand. Yeah, and then I'll come back. Okay, so the question is about variants. Good news is you haven't heard that word too much lately, right? You heard it a lot in March and April as we started identifying variants. So don't worry about variants. Every virus changes. Every virus mutates. We knew there were going to be mutations or variants. So far, the vaccines are working great against the variants. How do we know? Commissioner Morelli of OEM was here before, was telling me the percentage rate is now below 1% of all positives. There was only 122 cases yesterday in the county. 2 months ago, there were 1,000 cases a day. If the variants weren't covered by the vaccine, all these people who were vaccinated would be getting COVID. They're not. They're clearly not. The COVID vaccines right now are working against the variants. If a time comes when a variant comes out that the vaccine doesn't work, that'll be a problem. Then we're going to need a different vaccine to cover that. But we do that every year with flu shots. Every year you take a different flu shot to cover the different strains. You had another question, then you.
Where do we find these consent forms?
So we're going to be sending them to schools, but New York State, under its COVID, we're going to be sending to the schools to pass out if kids want to bring it. Best thing is for parents to come with kids. There's a reason we're doing Saturday and Sunday so that everybody can fit it in. But we're going to send them to schools. And on New York State's COVID website, there is a general consent form that is acceptable. Good question. Thank you. Yeah. How soon can we expect 12 to 15-year-olds to be vaccinated? Very soon. In fact, I've told my 14-year-old to have her phone ready that at any moment, second I can get her approval, I'm coming to get her. And she's like, can it be during mass? And I said, oh, I don't know about that. But the ACIP, thank you. Somebody got the humor. ACIP, the Washington-based group that determines vaccine policy, is scheduled to meet Wednesday. I assume they're going to approve 12 to 15-year-olds Wednesday. Then the CDC makes a formal recommendation. Probably by next Friday, I would say 12 to 15-year-olds can be vaccinated. And if they can, we will allow that to happen as long as there are slots at our event next week. Yeah, and then I'm coming over to your side. Is it true that people who've had COVID react badly to a second dose? Actually, people that have had COVID, kind of like everybody else. Some people don't react at all. Some people have some fever and chills and achiness. Maybe it's a little bit more of that fever and chills and achiness in people. I found it in the first dose for people who've had COVID before, but it lasts like 6 or 8 or 10 hours and then they're back to normal. Some people have a strong immune response, but certainly none of that is a reason you're not sick with COVID. You're having it means your immune system's working, it's protecting you. So it's actually, in a certain way, a positive thing, although you feel lousy for a little while. Yes? Does what? Do drugs affect the vaccine? There are a couple of drugs like steroids, if you're on it for a long time, they don't affect the vaccine, but they affect your immune system. But there's virtually no drugs that people are taking that would prevent you from getting the vaccine. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I've heard a rumor lately, and I know you talked about the symptoms that you would have after taking the vaccine, such as soreness and redness and stuff.
Yeah.
I've heard a little bit about women having the next period after having the first dose would be like different somehow, as in like heavier or maybe worse when it comes to cramps. Can that be a symptom of like after having the first dose?
I have not heard this. Has my team heard this? Has Paul Center heard this? Nobody's heard this. So there's a lot of rumors out there. I read the journals every single day. I watch the news every single day. I'm on CDC calls. I get invited to the White House's updates. I've not heard this at all. So, you're going to hear a lot of rumors. For those that didn't hear, the question is, do women's menstrual cramps and bleeding change after a vaccine? I've not heard that at all. Has anybody seen that in the literature? Anybody seen an article on that? Have you? Where'd you see it? All right, so I could be wrong. Maybe I missed that article, but I'm unaware of that effect at all. And just because you saw it online doesn't make it true, doesn't make it right. But I am interested to do my own research. Everybody should do their own research, right? Do your own research and make sure it's from a reputable source. And if there's something that I hadn't heard about, then we'll correct it. We'll tell you I was wrong, right? We're learning every day. I will be wrong. At some point, I will be wrong. My wife tells me everything. No, yeah. So why did Pfizer get approved? That's a great question. Why did Pfizer get approved for the younger group while Moderna and Johnson & Johnson did not? Does anybody know how this works? Why is Pfizer 16 and 17 and the others are not? Go ahead. Yeah, Pfizer studied it in 16 and 17-year-olds and requested approval. Moderna probably works just as well in 16 and 17-year-olds. They didn't study it. They didn't ask for approval. So when Pfizer studied it, they didn't study for 18 and over. They studied for 16 and over. And now they studied it for 12 to 15. And I don't know if anybody saw, now they're studying 2 to 11. By fall, we're going to be able, hopefully, to vaccinate 2-year-olds and up. That's going to be a whole different battle with parents of young kids, and I understand the concerns. But Pfizer studied it from 16 and over. There was no significant side effects. If there were, it would not have been approved. So it was approved for 16 and over based on the safety data. So there's no reason to think somebody who's 16 has more impact than somebody who's 20 or 30 or 40 or different side effects. There's no truth to the sterility rumor. We know many women who've been vaccinated have had babies, have had healthy babies, have delivered babies, and have gotten pregnant in the same numbers as those who are not vaccinated. So that's how you dispel the rumors. You look at the numbers, the actual numbers. Yeah.
Is it possible for side effects to develop 5 to 10 years later?
Is it possible for side effects to develop 5 or 10 years later? What's the answer to that? Of course. Of course. It's very unlikely. And you say, well, how do you know that? We've brought dozens of vaccines to market. It almost never happens that way. I can't tell you what's going to happen 5 or 10 years from now. But remember, in medicine, and this is a good closing point, in medicine, every decision, you weigh the pros and you weigh the cons, right? The very unlikely possibility of a side effect in 5 to 10 years is one of the cons. But the pros, what's the most important pro? You don't die. Your family doesn't die. We're not giving this vaccine for fun. We're giving this vaccine because people die if we don't. So is there a chance of a long-term side effect? It's very unlikely, but I can't say 100%. Who knows what's going to happen in 10 years? But I can tell you that without vaccine, thousands of people would be dying every day now. So the pros of the vaccine outweigh the cons. But yes, and that is one of the arguments that I can't refute. I don't know if there's a very rare, unlikely side effect that's going to happen in 5 or 10 years. Okay? Any last words? Thank you. You guys are great. We have nice T-shirts for you. Kyle, I turn it over to you.
Yeah, come on out, folks. We've got,
And feel free to stop by the vaccination events and say hello and bring your friends, and signing up is easy. Mickey, thank you.
And we're doing a town hall.
Oh, the town hall is
Next Wednesday at 6 p.m. in Eisenhower Park by the Lakeside Theater. You are all welcome to come. County Executive Kern will also be there.
If you'd like to meet the county executive, come to the town hall at Eisenhower Park next Wednesday at
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. It's a beautiful setting.
Medium, large, and.
Have a great weekend, everybody. And now.